The historic 1991, we announced the building of an open, democratic state with a socially oriented market economy and establishing of a civil society in the country. And then we got a legacy from the former Soviet Union, a catastrophic recession and galloping inflation, which was estimated at more than 1,000% per year. It is hard to imagine the situation now, but then the stocks of wheat and flour were only for 10 and 15 days. And the issue of achieving the fuel and energy and grain self-sufficiency was made an important strategic challenge on the agenda. Indeed, Uzbekistan, being the main producer and supplier of raw cotton at the same time, had to supply more than 80% of its needs in grain and flour through the imports from the outside of the country. Therefore, from the very first years of independence, Uzbekistan started to head the modernization of agriculture, introduction of new economic and social relations in the fields. Life, in fact, proved how right was the decision to complete the transition to private farming, raising the grain-growing culture, settling the issues of timely provision of material resources to farmers, creating new locally adopted varieties, combining the science with the rich experience of farmers, modernize the processing industry through the introduction of modern technologies. The result of such a complex and sound work is the wheat independence, when our country not only became fully self-sufficient, but also started exporting. The human factor, unfortunately, can make adjustments to the processes of development. Sometimes these adjustments are negative and even undermine the dynamic development of the entire industry when the personnel is put above the public. When one is sure a responsible and important position in the industry is not a stage in the career or professional life, but a very convenient direct route, exactly a route to personal enrichment. The following are the facts that one cannot argue with. The joint stock company Uzdan Mahsulat. It is the very agency that is responsible for implementing the comprehensive reforms in the area, coordinating the activities of its business units. In 2000, March the 6th, at one of them, namely the flour mill number 2, Tashkent employees of the main department for combating the corruption and terrorism, the Interior Ministry of Uzbekistan, started checking its financial and economic activities. And from the March the 9th of the same year, based on the obtained information about the management and financial and economic abuses by the joint stock company Uzdan Mahsulat in the grain industry of the country, a group of experts began an audit of the state joint stock company. New facts were discovered one after another. A number of violations by the company, in particular, relating to the allocation of public funds between the regional offices of flour mill Uzdan Mahsulat, were identified. On March the 27th of 2000, based on the fact of the abuse of the office, Article 205 of the Criminal Code of the Republic of Uzbekistan, fraud, Article 268 of the Criminal Code of the Republic of Uzbekistan, and the theft of the state property by embezzlement and misappropriation, Article 167 of the Criminal Code of the Republic of Uzbekistan, the Interior Ministry prosecuted the case. During the investigation, it detained the deputy chairman of the Uzdan Mahsulat, Niyazov, and the employee of the company Uch Khahraman, Atayev Saparvay Matniyazovich, the state joint stock company director's brother. The main figurant of our story, Olim Atayevich Atayev, was rather calm in those days. On March the 30th, he went on a business trip to Jizakh region, accompanied by Said Rahmanov, the director of the Duslik flour mill. He toured a number of companies in the region, held a meeting of directors in Jizakh Don Mahsulat, and on the way back, the chairman moved to the Duslik flour mill director's car and headed to Tashkent. Then, the events developed as a detective story. After reaching the Ok-Oltin checkpoint in Sirgar region, Atayev dismissed the driver with his car and disappeared. In the meantime, criminal proceedings were involving more and more new facts. As a matter of fact, After Alem Atayev's escape on April the 30th of 2000, his children, Nadejda Atayeva and Kahraman Alimovich Atayev, also disappeared. By the strange coincidence, or maybe it is perfectly logical, the daughter working as the manager for the external affairs of the LLC NZI, who will be discussed further, and the son working as an assistant attorney for the Uzbek-American joint venture Yangi Zaman.
Объект Yangi Zaman?
The Yangi Zaman facilities. It is located on the outskirts of the city, in Kuyluk. Then he called me and asked that I will be involved in providing the communications for Yangi Zaman. Well, then there was a plan to organize the production of gingerbreads. I was fully involved in the project organization and we introduced this facility. And then, I remember I delayed the natural gas. And then, he called me and told me to submit my resignation letter. Well, I wrote my resignation letter. Then I thought to myself, why? I don't understand. I work here so much, and all of a sudden they make me write a resignation letter. I asked the assistant next day, Dilshad, what should I do? Leave? No, he said, keep working. So I stayed and the gas was turned on again. That is how the interests were lobbied. He that commits a fault thinks that everyone speaks of it, as they say. Naturally, this exodus was motivated. It was motivated by the facts of criminal deeds that float up to the surface as the bubbles when it rains. The audit discovered the violations in the company's activities related to the distribution of the public funds between the regional offices of the flour miller Uzdon Mahsulat.
We did this in those areas where flour was not selected. It was just the Nevayu region, and there were some leftovers of flour funds. Well, that was the case. We issued such letters of assignment by Atayev's instructions. Was it legal or illegal? No, it was illegal. Transfer of funds from one area to another can be done only with the permission of the Cabinet of Ministers. Was there any such permission? No, there wasn't.
Those enterprises where Alem Atayev's close relatives had settled had the opportunity to work actively in the grain industry of the country, disposing of the people's bread as they wanted. In September of 1999, the joint venture Yangi Zaman, where Senior Atayev's son was working, bought 10 mini bakeries for $3.1 million. But the preliminary cost of the equipment, according to the independent experts, was about $13 million, which means the price had been lowered by more than 4 times. It was difficult to refuse such a gift. The company NZI, where Atayev's daughter Nadejda worked, was a virtual monopoly in the supply of polypropylene bags for the country's flour mills.
There was a woman hanging around all the time, doing the plates as we drank tea. I used to see her all the time. When I was asked if I knew that the woman was the firm's administrator, I didn't even know the firm's name. I thought she was just a cleaner. Well, the daughter was rather secretive. She never talked to anyone. What kind of job did she do? I still have no idea. She used to say she had had serious business training.
Besides, it was no big deal for the former manager of the joint stock company to organize a stable mechanism of receiving the bribes of putting his own people to high and important positions using his own official position. To put it more simply, the positions had to be either bought or obtained by being his relative. That is certainly not good, it's negative. For instance, I never let my children join my job. They are on their own. My relatives never worked anywhere. Though I had the opportunity to find a position for them, since I was occupying an important position. He shouldn't have done what he did. If you have to appoint a person to such a position, then you should make sure he knows the industry in the first place, and all the statutory provisions, and can be a leader. You shouldn't take someone just from the street.
It was a shame, you know. Our industry is considered one of the noble industries. Well, bread is holy. You have to have clean hands working with it, you know. After he ran away, it resonated across the whole country. And in those days, when you said Uzbek Khleb product, you would think of something negative. This is like a stain on all our industry, you know. So I think he shouldn't have done it. Because of only one person, all of people working in the area were put into shame.
Meanwhile, the criminal case folder was getting thicker. The investigation discovered still more new facts. Atayev Alim, under the pretext of converting the state's subsidiary company Uch Khahramannon to a private limited liability company, registered the enterprise on the name of his brother Saparbay Atayev, and Kahraman Atayev, using the forged documents, and appropriated the enterprise. Moreover, Atayev, with the purpose of the embezzlement of the funds of the enterprises under their jurisdiction, including Andijan Mahsulat, Shahrukhandon, Andijon Don Mahsulot, Asaka Don Mahsulotlari, Qurg'ontepa Don Mahsulotlari, having exerted the pressure on leaders of the above-mentioned enterprises, forced out agreements from the company NZI, whose activity was practically controlled by his daughter Nadejda Atayeva. He overpriced the supplied bags of wheat, thereby bringing the big damage to the state. Besides, the Atayev illegally shrank 1.915 tons of flour belonging to the association Navai Matlubot Savda, and unlawfully transferred this flour to the LLC Uch Khahramannon, which was owned by his relatives, causing a particularly big damage to the state interests. Furthermore, Atayev used the state resources to unlawfully provide a credit to the joint venture Yangi Zaman, causing a particularly big damage to the state interests. Moreover, Atayev, jointly with the director of the enterprise Yangi Zaman, Yurieva, used the forged documents to unlawfully privatize the state-owned many bakeries Bokanon, Qushbeginon, Kukchanon, Beshqayrog'ochnon, Mboka, Shifobaxsh, Oloynon, Bog'iston, Savopnon, Samarqand Darvoza in favor of the joint venture Yangi Zaman, causing a particularly big damage to the state interests. Also, Atayev supplied the enterprises with government credits and stock raw material to sell the products with the aid of his accomplices for cash and later appropriated the funds. By the above-mentioned criminal deeds, Atayev brought big volume damage to the state interest amounting to more than 730 million sums in national currency and more than 13 million US dollars. Based on the total volume of collected proofs, Atayev was charged for the crimes specified in the articles 167, 205, 209 of the Penal Codes of the Republic of Uzbekistan and was declared wanted for further arrests. These facts are nothing more than the confirmation of the fact that Atayev and his inner circle, by their unlawful actions, caused great damage to the country's grain policies and undermine the effectiveness of the strategically important industry. According to the investigative task received from the main department of the Criminal Investigation and Combating Terrorism of the Uzbekistan Interior Ministry, citizen Alim Atayev was put on the international wanted list in 2000 through the Interpol channels on the Red Circular and is wanted for arrest and extradition. Red Circular number A476-5-2000. Later, some work had been done to locate the whereabouts of the citizen. Separate investigative assignments were sent to the CIS countries. Moreover, a separate request was sent to the Russian Federation National Interpol Bureau, which provided the relevant information. Then, some work has been done with our colleagues from the United States to establish his possible whereabouts in the country. The Washington National Interpol Bureau provided the needed information. Upon that information, we cooperated with our colleagues in the National Central Bureau of Interpol in Paris. According to the available information, Atayev is registered in France in the refugee status. He has the special card valid until 2015. We also have his address registered in France. According to the recent information received from our colleagues from the National Central Bureau of Interpol in Paris, upon the request of Uzbekistan Republic, the extradition of Atayev at the moment is rejected due to a number of reasons. According to the European Agreement, extradition dated 1957. It is necessary to provide the entire package of materials in French, and these should be sent not directed to the Attorney General, not the Minister of Justice, but via the diplomatic channels, that is, through the embassy, through our consulate and the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Uzbekistan. The request for the extradition of the above citizen of the Republic of Uzbekistan was rejected by the competent authorities of the French Republic. For every crime, there should be a punishment and justice should prevail. Laws of any state which choose the democratic way of development envisage this. But how effective are these international rules in the global? The case of the figurants in our story makes one wonder about many things. Yes, you will be surprised, but the Atayevs showed up and live happily in France. The daughter Nadejda, for example, is working in a newspaper agency, specialized in research and information on the Central Asian region, mostly false and of biased nature, we should admit. In April of 2008, the Foreign Minister of the Republic of Uzbekistan, through the Embassy of the Republic of Uzbekistan in France, sent a petition of the Attorney General of the Republic of Uzbekistan on extradition of Olam Atayevich Atayev and his family. Simultaneously with the request, the minister sent the criminal case translated into French. In February of 2009, the embassy was informed that the request was processed by the French Minister of Justice. In the year of 2009, the Embassy of Uzbekistan repeatedly sent notes to the French Foreign Minister on speeding up the issue of Atayev's extradition. But this issue is still delayed by the French side. At the insistence of the embassy in May of 2010, a meeting with the Continental Europe Department Deputy Director, the French Foreign Ministry, Mr. Meynet, was organized, and during this meeting, the increased concern of the Uzbek side about the lengthier delay of the issues was conveyed. In turn, Mr. Meynet told that the French side had completely closed Atayev's case. However, he refused to explain the reason to the decision and said that a written response on this issue would not be presented. The last request to the French Foreign Ministry was sent on February the 8th and the Minister of Justice on February the 10th of 2012. Questions, questions and again questions. Yet there are still no clear answers. Why is the European country fighting for justice and human rights is not giving over the one who actually robbed his own people, though all the procedures have been carried out in accordance with the international laws? Actions, or rather inactions, somehow do not fit to the declared principles of democracy. The country's much wanted freedom of thought is now apparently failing. And this circumstance is being used for the concrete purposes. Again, the question is who? Certainly, time is the wisest judge. It will place everything on its proper place. The damage brought has long ago been recovered thanks to the development rate of the country's agriculture. But the question still exists. How are the individuals who talked about earning their living? Who talked